mean, that's more than even Elon Musk gave to Trump this election cycle. And at the end of it, the Biden White House was actually not good to them. I mean, this is one of the great ironies, as sadistic as the Biden White House was to its enemies, it was not even good to its friends. The fact is the Biden State Department did nothing to protect Mark Zuckerberg against foreign governments cracking down on Facebook, like the EU Digital Services Act, which just a few months ago took major enforcement actions against all of Meta. Against this came from Brazil, from Canada, from Australia. Typically, you would think in a typical crony capitalism situation, when a big, Meta is a top 5, top 7 company by market cap at this point. They're one of the top 10 largest companies in the world. They did huge favors for the Biden campaign, and the Biden administration just continued to milk them dry. I mean, crony capitalism 101 is, you reward your cronies.
Yeah. Little quid pro quo.
Right. But it was all quid, no quo. And so in the face of that, you had the growing irritations by Zuckerberg that even if they completely, supined themselves, laid prostrate, they still would not be protected. They watched as Google has been gored by the Justice Department. The Biden administration has been proceeding with this, Microsoft-style, Standard Oil-style attempt to break up of Google. They're threatening that of Facebook. So I think Zuckerberg felt like he didn't want to do this in the first place. He only did because of commercial pressure. All of the bending over backwards did not relinquish the pressure one iota. So he'd rather have the kind of symmetry that comes from, now it's easy to do the right thing because now the regulators are going to be run by the Trump administration. Yeah. So I think he wanted to do that in the first place, but was too much of, frankly, did not want to take the risk that Elon did. Now that it's sort of secure to do that, I think he's going with what he wanted to do anyway, and now it's sort of working out perfectly for him in that he gets to, cozy up to the administration and feel like that's also in the business interests of Facebook.
On those, I exist on both of those platforms, staying in the Meta ecosystem. Facebook, not as much. I don't use as much Instagram. Man, I would love to say it was just looking at pictures, but it is a whole social ecosystem in and of itself. Probably the worst platform ever to have arguments on, but that's what people seem to use it for. Yeah. And you hear all the time on both of those platforms, you hear about censorship, you hear about the algorithm, you hear about shadow banning. And I think at this point, especially with an announcement today from Zuckerberg, there is no question that it was happening. But these entities, they never talk about the mechanism of what exactly they're doing. Who is this impacting? People can talk about, they'll go to their back end and say, well, my metrics are down and this, that, or the other. And quite frankly, sometimes people just post boring shit, right? So you see people all the time, I'm being shadow banned. It's like, actually know that the 400th picture of your cat in a row is just not trending the way that it used to. Nothing against cat. I happen to be more of a dog person, but they never actually pull back the curtain to show the mechanism of what they're doing. And I'm curious as to why you think that is. I mean, my assumption would be is they just don't want people to know because of how expansive and powerful it actually is.
Right. I think from their perspective, they talked about this a lot from 2017 to 2019 when they were setting up this architecture about how transparent to be from the platform side to users, especially when it comes to so-called borderline content that does not violate the terms of service, but that Facebook, for political or commercial reasons, does not want to dominate the platform. So Facebook has a borderline content policy. YouTube has one. Twitter had one for a while. And I think part of not saying what kind of content gets throttled with specificity is designed to prevent what they call brinksmanship, which is when you know what the algorithm says you can't do without getting punished, then it incentivizes people who want to publish that kind of content to go right up to the line and basically get 99% of the way there, but not trip the deboost, not trip the words or phrases or constellation of terms or images that have been hashed in databases to create that throttling so that that content effectively dominates because it's just shy of it. So for example, if they were to break out the exact list of keywords, so for example, negative efficacy was one of these terms during the COVID era, where if you suggested that the vaccines had negative efficacy, or if or stop the steal, for example, was a censored phrase during the 2020 election. There's millions of these. There's entire careers that people get paid six-figure salaries to constantly update these code books of throttled terms, words, phrases, tweaking the sentiment analysis to determine whether or not you support the thing that you are mentioning or not. This is all this whole sort of computational field of natural language processing that the AI goes into rigging the AI. But I think from their perspective, if they were to disclose that with full transparency, instead of saying stop the steal, you would say, STAHP, the steal.
Game the system.
Yes, exactly. Or you would, and also these things move fast. As in addition to the code bases and lexicon that's maintained at a static chronic level, there's also, Facebook has what are called rapid response units, which is that when there are trending news narratives, there are whole teams at Facebook that curate the evolution of that news coverage in order to make sure it goes a certain way. So, for example, when the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin, immediately Facebook, the rapid response units took to the news cycle in order to prevent any sort of amplification of pro Kyle Rittenhouse sides of the story, downranking and throttling news organizations that provided favorable coverage, applying deboost to accounts that amplified it, shadow banning or throttling anything that mentioned the terms or phrases. And so you see a lot of that as well. And so sometimes they can't even really provide a kind of transparency because it's not feasible because of how fast moving these things are.